play NBA championship night starting tonight. And,
first night. Here we go.
You completely turned the tables, right?
I am on the bandwagon. I'm reliving 1970 and 73. I'm waiting for Willis Reed to walk out the door with his knee bandaged up, and I always thought I always wanted to be Earl the Pearl Monroe or Walt Frazier as a kid growing up. I spent hours outside in front of the house dribbling, learning to dribble between my legs, around my back. So it's been a while. And then, of course, I think I mentioned last week the big debate about people trying to say that some of these guys are better than Ewing. So, but I did see Spike Lee on this morning. I will have to give him a shout out for his glasses matching the Knicks colors and attire. So
that's great.
Yeah, you gotta love the New York flavor. The NBA's got to be loving this.
I tell you, I mean, and again, I am not a fan of most things in New York. The only team I've really ever rooted for is the Rangers. And but when I think I mentioned this before, when the Knicks and the Rangers are going in the spring like this, I remember the mid-90s in New York, it doesn't get more energized. I'm actually going to go Friday night. I might go down to Manhattan to go see a friend's band, but I'm not 100%. I know his wife better. His wife may or may not go, so I'm not sure if I'm going to go meet them. But either way, I've decided I'm going to Manhattan just to go, into the bars because people get so fired up.
The bar or swing by Times Square or whatever. Whatever.
People love it. I love and again, he's definitely not the person I would have chosen out of the box, but we'll turn a little segue quick to politics. I love Mandami's stuff that he's doing. He is definitely
crazy, and is he going to potentially put together the blueprint now?
Oh no, I really think he is. I think how you get this done. I love the. Did you see he had a bunch of kids in the mansion office over there, and he pardoned the whatever, he had an executive order
extended bedtime. I mean,
that is great.
You gotta love that kind of stuff.
And I told my wife, maybe it's him, maybe it's his team, but somebody's really smart. Somebody's really on the ball.
They are pulling all the levers, and it's what's going to be interesting. It's when they predict this, this doomsday. Everyone's going to leave New York. There's only one New York in the whole world.
Exactly.
People are not going to be leaving New York. This whole theory is not accurate.
I know what the people who seem most concerned about New York at the time of the election were feeling like hate New York. The only reason they were concerned was because they're concerned he actually might succeed. That's the problem. Well, that's what and then he becomes the model.
I mean, he's getting more stuff. I mean, you can do it, with a small municipality. Yeah. Well, that's not a small municipality, but at that level is a whole different thing than, the federal level or even the state level. But still, he's getting stepped up. Of course, he's bigger than most of, a lot of the states. So
no, definitely. Yeah, exactly. I think they always consider it the second hardest job in the country. It's a difficult place to manage. But getting back to the series, though, I tell you, I obviously I've got a little bit of a rooting interest in Knicks myself, but it is two very likable teams for the NBA. Usually in the NBA, you hate at least one of the teams, maybe even both of the teams. Two very likable teams.
SGA's got to, his team's got to get together, and he's got to rebrand himself between now and next season, because the flopping thing and the falling thing, no pun intended, has just landed flat. He's got to figure it out, because he was so popular a year ago in the finals, just lights out. But he's done himself a disservice, and I mean it's bad.
No, I agree. I think it's a I think soccer went through it, with the flopping, and they had to change. And I'm not a huge soccer fan, but I admire soccer more than I'm probably a fan. But they had to put in new rules around it, and I think the NBA is going to have to go in that direction too, because it starts to take away from the entertainment.
Well, the flow of the game is just completely functional. At this point and stuff. So it's after the ebb and flow, they went to the free movement, no pun intended again. But they may have to regress a little bit back to a little bit more of the 80s, a little bit more, let it
Yeah.
become a little more physical and stuff, which
Yeah.
playoff basketball by nature becomes more physical. But
Mhm.
and he's such a good player. He doesn't need to do it. So
No, exactly. I'm just going to play with, I'm getting a little bit of bad connection here. Make sure I've got we have a couple of different Wi-Fi meshes, and I'm getting a little bit of if it comes out a little intermittent, hopefully it'll clean up as time goes on. It might be because I have a couple streams open. That might not be helping matters. Anyway though, so we'll see how it goes. Maybe I'll close down. I'm trying to. Knicks aren't going to get started for a few minutes. They're doing the national anthem and trying to watch that as well.
they got a production in the finals.
Exactly. We'll get better at it. So yeah, so it's I think it's going to be a really interesting week. I think it'll be again, I remember the Knicks playoffs weeks, and I think to your point, just you think of Knicks of the post '70s teams that went to the finals. You got the Stark Mason teams. You're talking about teams that are really were physical, and so it'll be interesting how this takes on. I mean, I think the NBA wants to see more offense, but I think you're right. I think it gets to a point where it starts to hurt the competition, and then you wonder. I mean, like you're those Oklahoma City fans going home that night. That must have been painful to lose that way. I mean, that had to just be painful to go home.
Yeah, and it really wasn't. I mean, it was close, but thinking the Spurs controlled it from start.
They really did. They took control.
Every time that and SGA mentioned it in the press conference. Every time they kind of did a little push, it seemed like the Spurs had an answer to them. Sure. But then it pivots to the other question that we're going to have to watch the NBA this summer. Not that this is an NBA episode, but it can be as much as we want.
No, sure.
But, the Jazz out here, they got a lot of flack. I think they got fined for tanking, but everybody always, votes, acknowledges the Spurs as this great organization, but they're the ones that created Pop was ahead of everybody. He created tanking. Sure. He created management, load management, all these things. Yeah. And so now but they acknowledge the Spurs, but boy, they didn't like it when the Jazz finally got a pick. They got the second pick, and I think they'll trade up because there's a kid that played for BYU that played in a private school down in St. George, Utah, who's number 2. So they'll figure out a trade to get him up because the kid wants to stay in Utah. Yeah. But that's the other thing on the NBA's plan. What do they do about the tanking? Or but the Spurs for years. That's why they are where they are.
You're funny. You said you were talking the lottery and NBA's plan, and I could still remember when the Knicks pulled the Patrick Ewing card out. The best thing ever happened to the NBA and the Knicks won. I remember watching that live, and so when you said that, I remember it. I think it's it's going to be a good week.
Or you go back even another, just about a generation, and Red, drafting Bird the year before so this is before the one and dones, right? Yep. He drafted Bird after his junior year and just says, "I'll wait a year."
And it's crazy that people weren't doing that all over the board. I mean, the fact that he could do it was almost like he found the fine print, and then obviously they closed it out right after that. So,
yeah. Well, there's always somebody that's a little bit ahead of the curve, So
definitely.
So
definitely.
But it will be a fun series. It's a kind of two entertaining teams. Brunson will be interesting to see what he does. I mean, the kids, been every year kind of incrementally pushing the envelope a little bit more. So
sure.
And then obviously revisiting the whole playoffs is how much defense can James Harden ever play?
Oh yeah, no.
Your boy's in depression, but you know what? You bring James Harden onto your team, and
and I don't follow the NBA that closely. When they traded for Harden, I'm like, I don't know. My Harden experience says this is not a good idea. And he loved Garland, my son. He loved Garland, and that was just somebody said, who was it? One of the ESPN announcers said, Max Kellerman said, trading for James Harden to win a championship is like electing Donald Trump to improve your country.
Donald Trump to decrease the deficit.
Yeah, exactly. So I guess we call Donald Trump the James Harden the president. So that'd be about the biggest control.
That's not
going to get.
not a bad metaphor there.
Yeah, exactly. And so speaking of clowns, so of all around. So yeah, so I think what we're looking into tonight, and I think right on cue, the Trump administration gave us some really good fodder by putting Polt is in charge of DNI today, which he has no business doing. I think it's funny being down in Florida. We see the Polt homes all over the place. Never thought anything negative of them, of course, not thinking and connecting. And now, of course, one more thing we get to hate. But it's just the common theme ever since he said, "I only hire the best people," which knowing now, even he never has hired the best people. But here we go again, more clowns in his cabinet.
Well, he hires the best people and then he fires the best people.
Yeah. Well, he had some good people his first cabinet, as it turned out. We didn't appreciate.
Well, the first cabinet was, he tried to, kind of play by the rules. I don't know if play by the rules, but having what you would call your traditional cabinet, and he didn't like people that knew the way of established protocols in government and things of that sort.
Sure.
Can't we just shoot him in the knees?
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah, and so
exactly.
that's why this second term is such a frightening or disturbing, whatever word you want to come up with, because of people he's surrounding himself by and the echo chamber they live in.
Well, the one thing he did not lie to us about for once was that he was going to go a different direction in this cabinet, and he certainly has. I think one of the biggest contrasts right off the bat, I think, is James Mattis, was a man of integrity in the first cabinet.
Exactly.
And you get Hesgeth, and what
But how would you like to have your footnote in history have that in there after that type of a career?
Exactly. And it's just, I don't watch a lot of the press conferences, during the day, but I watched one of the press conferences during the war. And just the overt discussion of religion around everything, etc. And then, and Pope Leo's discussion about, there's nothing about Jesus in war. And again, being a veteran, you got to you got to stretch it a little bit. You got to think, I'm defending my family, defending my country, but geez, we obviously are not we're definitely the aggressor out there in certain cases. And I got comfortable with it. Our soldiers do the right thing, but man, to try to take it's like when athletes come out and say, I won the game because God loves me. Well, God loves the outcome.
God doesn't care about the outcome of ball games.
Exactly. And God's not on either side of war.
If you want to say, hey, thanks, I'm thankful for my gifts. I'm thankful that I've had this opportunity. Yeah. That's cool. Go ahead. But God does not care which team wins or loses.
If he does, it might explain a lot of the problems we have around the rest of the world. But you get to this point now, trying to put religion into war. It's offensive, I think, to a lot of us. But he is just, even it's beyond the drinking and everything else. He's just such. And this is, the Secretary of Defense is our last level of protection in so many ways, and we've got one of the weirdest human beings on the planet in that role. It's crazy.
He personifies the clown persona. All he needs is a big nose and red nose and some makeup. Because how can anybody take anything that he really says with an ounce of take him seriously? And I guess was it this week the data came out about his firings? Primarily a lot of minority. The first woman, I can't remember her name. The first woman that led the Navy, he fired her, and this guy, he served. We'll give him that.
Definitely him.
Yeah,
he's been there.
Aside from that, leadership wise and stuff, the deal better. And pretty low qualified Secretary of Defense. I will not say war for those guys.
No, definitely. Yeah, no, I agree. And it's funny, he had the and again, today, I don't know if a lot of people like me, you read the headlines of things, you don't have the time necessarily dig into it. So of course, sometimes these headlines are jaded, But they had one of the headlines was about how he stopped the promotion in the Navy of blacks and women, and it's like they're not trying to hide it in so many levels, and it's just another way they're going with it. And,
but was it it wasn't the Supreme Court, but it was a federal court put an injunction on transgender.
Yep.
Officers, not officers, but just enlisting or being in the service, and
sure.
they had a rough week because they've been kind of losing a number of
Sure.
cases and stuff, and that that was one of them that they but they kept the injunction in place. Now you never know where it's going to go, how with the Supreme Court, that that 6-3 conservative folks, whether I can't figure out for anybody whether it's the court. We watch in the Senate. Oh, and there was a resolution. The resolution came out of the House today.
Yeah, they should win in the Senate, mostly because he's kicked off so many senators.
Yeah, and I think it's going to happen. I think it's going to pass in the Senate too.
Oh yeah. Well, it's funny.
He's having a rough time. He's having some good temper tantrums. And then when you talk about
he's running into the limits of his power in a lot Yeah. Realizing it's not an absolute power with these things that are happening.
He's pushed it further, further towards the line than anybody else that I can remember. But then you talk about clowns and circuses. I mean, it's kind of embarrassing. I mean, I don't know about you, but I struggle. We're gonna have our 250th anniversary. So I was 15 when when it was 200, and it was a pretty and it was I think it was pretty strategic by Ford at the time, trying to bring the country together and try to do some healing after Watergate and these type of things.
And he was an election campaign year, so
exactly. But I'll tell you, the White House is a complete circus.
Oh yeah.
The East Wing is torn up. We got the wrestling tower going up. I mean, what the heck is going on?
Wrestling would be a step up from Ultimate Fighting, right? It's like
well, there you go.
We're gonna have it's by its definition, it's kind of barbaric. It's gonna be,
so I mean, it's like, who would have ever? You talk about our forefathers. They just got to be turning over on their graves, saying, "What is going on?"
Well, and that was what kind of spurred the idea on this one was that image of the White House, and I think we've all seen it with the whole the cage going up and the towers around it, and then the ballroom, grotesquely large ballroom being built next to it. It's like, it looks like a circus. I mean, it looks like right out of Central Casting. So and then I read today again, just read the headline that he's not necessarily saying that on June 15th that this cage is coming down. He's talking about
he meant, hey, don't plant an idea, it'll be Saturday night from the White House, once a month.
And they said he made an investment in Ultimate Fighting right after he made the announcement, and so it's like, again, it's all the things layered together. It's the grotesque vision of America. It's the graft and corruption, stealing money from our pockets. So, taking money from our public, putting into his pockets, putting into his friend's pockets. It just, and again, nobody seems to care. No media.
We talked about it a little bit last week. We're starting to see a little bit about there are some lines where we're actually drawing the lines in the sand, the funding, the slush fund and the funding for the ballroom and these type of things. So there's a little glimmer of
taking his name off the Kennedy Center.
That was a great
good
one.
Symbolically.
Yep.
It'd be funny to see how many acts are going
to play off something fierce. I mean, that's just driving him crazy.
Well, then every act in the country now is going to line up to play there just to rub it in his face because they all bailed out.
Just the opposite that's going to happen is people are going to just go after it. It'll be interesting because they still have that their board that he's the chairman of.
Sure.
So whether they'll just kind of bury the place and just let it become idle, or actually do something, it will be
Well,
interesting.
they were talking about doing that anyway because they're doing.
But they're going to shut it down for a couple of years, you know. So.
Sure. And I think it gets back to Pull as well, that his real he's got no he's got no qualifications to be DNI, but his biggest qualification is and at the FHA he's been willing to go after political enemies of Trump or made up mortgages issues like Letitia James are, and so that's a dangerous man to put in a position where now he will have the metadata, et cetera, to really but not that facts mean anything to these people, but to really go after people and do things. So, and then you get those two clowns, and then you go right to probably who's for all intents and purposes probably the biggest clown is RFK Jr. Really just
did you see his snake video?
Was that?
Did you see his snake video?
At Dr. Oz's place of all places.
Yeah, I mean, you can't make this stuff up, man.
No, it's just. And I saw Dr. Oz today. It's funny, and another clown will get out here. We know he's not on the list, but he is like it's almost like he's getting his soul sucked out of his hair. Is completely white, like bleached. He's aged so much in the time period, and it's like it's just that you see these guys just getting their soul sucked out of them. You know what I mean? So it's but you get he's just the stuff with the way he hitting animals and and trying to it's just bizarre, the stuff that he's doing. Just everything about him that you thought was bad is 10 times worse,
right.
Yeah.
Well, they what was it a couple weeks ago, but they shut down releasing one of the studies. I can't remember which this study that which disease or which condition it was about, but they just I think it was about the effectiveness of the COVID vaccine.
Sure, yeah.
Which honestly, right down.
Which honestly, if in a sane world, the best thing Trump has done in his 6 years as president is the COVID vaccine, and it's the thing he's running away from. It's by far the best thing he's done.
Yeah, take credit for that. Sure.
He can't take credit for what he did right.
Just for Biden's economy recovery. He says, well, if I don't do that, then that economy will come back.
It was huge because and I'm a strong believer in what it did, etc. But it's what it did to our psyche. I was able to get the vaccine fairly early. Veterans were getting it earlier, and
and me too. As educators, we were
and
as well.
You just felt bulletproof once you got it. And we probably weren't as bulletproof as we thought we were. But it was it really did a lot for our psyche. They just showed Pop on the game. He does not look that great.
He doesn't look good at all. It's kind of it's kind of inspiring how his ball players are taking care of him, and
So but you're right. He's a he's a bright guy, an innovator, and frankly very outspoken liberal Democrat.
Well, him and Kerr, those guys, they don't care.
And his gravitas he does when he does, I think, is huge. And so I mean, RFK Jr., it almost like we could waste an hour of our life having an episode just about him. But man, he is so just disgusting what he's done. We name or whatever, and it's awful. It's just
we know. I shouldn't say we know, but we can maybe assume or think that Trump's desire to be embedded in history, which I don't think he needs to worry about.
Yeah, exactly.
He's going to be a historical figure, not for anything he wants to be, but he will be a historical figure, the likes that we've never seen.
Think about 100 years from now when people are thinking about the word Trump, like card means. Everybody's going to assume it was because of him somehow. They're gonna invert what Trump means. They're gonna assume it's some sort of metaphor to do with Trump, and not that it was a word that existed before Trump.
I think he's so obsessed, obviously, with the Camelot and Kennedy and these type of things. Those are the things that he wanted, and so purely bringing RFK on board was just a strategic. Get a Kennedy close to me,
exactly. And that whole that whole thing during the campaign with the in New York when the woman who was running RFK's campaign basically came out and said the whole campaign is just a scheme to try to help Trump, and
Trump, yep.
obviously, yeah, and it's so. And I was actually when I got hit in Pennsylvania, arguing with that guy about the campaign. It actually was because the guy said that he told me he said to me, he goes, the biggest mistake Democrats made was not making RFK Jr. their nominee. And I said,
Oh, no.
"Are you an effing idiot?" And that's what got me headbutted in. That wasn't happening. That's not. I love when people say, "Would you support Trump if he was Democrat?" It's like, no, the reason I'm a Democrat is because we never would have somebody like Trump as our candidate. And same thing with RFK, Jr. I should say, not RFK in general. But and I know I'm looking at him. I know I'm still breaking up a little bit. Sorry about that. I got a tough day on that. Probably got too many TVs in the house on streaming with the game on. That's probably the issue.
Very good. I think my Yankees are getting spanked right now, so my phone keeps clipping with the notice. So and it's interesting. If the Yankees lose 2 nights in a row, they had the young kids start last night and Cole start tonight. Yeah. So they will walk 2 nights in a row with their studs. So.
Yeah, we didn't talk about. I think we talked a little about it maybe in the first episode about Schindler about the Boston fans and just how disgusting that is. Like, A, the Red Sox didn't take a chance on him when he was coming in, and I think he wasn't a first round pick. I think it was a pretty good pick, but and B, what's the guy supposed to do? It's professional life, He's supposed to roll over and and then what you call it? I know Rice is in the Boston area too, so it's like they're getting it all over the place. So. But yeah,
I've talked about the Wade. These guys have been coming back recently. Yeah, the guy. We have those 2 or 3. You've got the Clemens and you have Wade and these guys that went from Boston and played for the Yankees. So it's the
I was watching something about Boggs with the Yankees, and at the time he was so. His statistics with the Red Sox are so off the charts on any measure in any generation. Yet you didn't appreciate how well he really played for the Yankees because his number had come down so much from the Red Sox. And again, he didn't have the left field wall to slap the ball off anymore. But I was watching and it's like what? But he was so good with the Red Sox those years that him hitting 328 seemed like he's done. He's not at 367 anymore. But it really and it's still by today's metrics he was a man ahead of his time. His OPS and all his offense.
Oh, absolutely, yeah.
And so now it is nice to see. I think it's important. I think it was like, the way the Red Sox fans treated Buckner was awful. And it was really, actually, at the time that ball went through Buckner's legs, they were losing that game anyway. They were tied. They had freaking Bob Stanley. And anybody who thought the Red Sox were going to World Championship after all that time with Bob Stanley on the mound in retrospect, that was crazy. I mean, our biggest sort of doofus pitcher ever is going to be the guy standing on the mound who won the World Series. And then, and they would have lost that in another inning or whatever anyway. And Dave Staples should have been at first base regardless. So it is what it is. But it was nice when they brought him back in. And,
it's the how, right? Going through your legs. But I always love things like that because, you can look at, I can't remember, Caleb was right in the middle of his high school career. And he was a pretty good, he was a 400 high school batter, and middle fiddle, and he had a rough game 2 or 3 years. And I said, I pulled up a game where Jeter had like 2 or 3 years, and it's a human. People forget that these guys are professional athletes, but they're humans, man, and they have nights.
Well, especially baseball, the whole measure of baseball is the fact that it's not perfect. It's you're playing against perfection in a sense. Right. It's obviously not the most dynamic sport in the world. It's almost like playing chess more than other sports. Yeah. But the whole point of it is how can you compete with perfect? How can you compete with batting with that? You're going to make errors,
Yeah. Back in my ecclesiastic days, gave me a talk one time about, but it's minimizing failure.
Yeah, exactly.
So if you're successful 3 out of 10 times, and this really, and I went into this because it was a presentation to a bunch of kids. I said it's actually much higher than that. It's like if you're 1 out of 10, because it doesn't count foul balls and all these type of things.
Sure,
I said
exactly.
the amount of times you actually get a base hit is astronomically tiny.
Sure. Exactly.
And these guys are professionals, so it's kind of interesting.
It's funny when I coached youth basketball, I did a lot of it, and you know, and this is typical of every youth basketball team. The kids always get upset because the point guard isn't passing, and normally you put the ball in a point guard's hand for a reason. He's your guy, right. And meanwhile, you know, a youth basketball team shoots maybe 20%. If they're lucky, probably 15%. Yeah. It's like, you know, 80% of those balls are coming off the backboard. Get in the rebounding position. That's how you're going to score some points.
That's your best chance of scoring right there.
Yeah. And then you're going to, so we started actually one of the years we won a championship. I had the kids, I had a 6th grade team, and we actually used the medicine balls to get them stronger. And we were doing almost like a dump and chase hockey team. We're just shooting threes, and then we're beating everybody to the rebounds. And we won the championship that year, just, you know, saying, hey, we're going to just chuck them up. And we hit a lot of threes. Almost every kid on the team hit a 3 during the year, which at that age is a pretty big deal. And then we just picked up the rebounds because we knew the threes were going up, and the other team wasn't ready for it. So, but so yeah, that was those were fun days. I made a ton of myself coaching back then, that's for sure. I was a little too into it in perspective, but then you get to Next Clowns, and so I kind of combined a little bit together because, you know, again with Trump now you're getting a little bit of bad to worse again with the Attorney General, you know.
Yeah. Well, and just to pivot off that, Janine's reading a book about I can't remember her name, but one of the Epstein's victims.
No, sure. Yeah.
Yeah. And she was going through the settlement. I said, well, that's one of Bondi's legacies is the the deal she gave Epstein.
Yeah.
You know, in Florida.
Yeah, exactly. And the people who talked to before that say she was actually a pretty normal human being, and a human being in general, I guess we could say, with her. And it was really, it feels like her slide into whatever she is now feels like it tracks to that Epstein time frame, you know, when she really went off the rails, you know.
And in the spirit of being kind, you don't know what type of leverage people were putting on people, what type of pressures coming from what directions, you just don't know, right? And but that was quite the arrangement.
Well, and now, and everybody, you had to be, I think we've learned now over time, you celebrate, we almost have to be like Pavlov's dogs. You celebrate that she's gone. And then now Blanche is worse in a lot in a lot of ways.
The devil that you know.
Yeah, he doesn't even get them. Like, she at least, got that whole emotional, the Dow's at 50,000, or he just literally lies like he breathes, like so many of them, and just goes whatever direction he wants to take reality with him. It's just it's all, and he's now doing things. I honestly don't know if she would have done some of the stuff he's doing now. Some places he's taken it with protecting him.
Mm-hmm.
And
again, calling the historical, and again, I think the theme that we keep hitting on for the last few weeks is, what is going to be the line? Is there ever going to be a Saturday night massacre, and they're going to go in and, like they did with Knicks, and say, hey, you just can't do this?
Yeah,
he's a Teflon man. Nobody, it doesn't matter what anybody says, and quite frankly, the way he, pretty much can primary anybody out, at the Republican level. I don't know if that's going to happen. If that time's going to come.
Yeah, sure. Republican concerns we're seeing now, the pushback within the Senate is the him primarying, and again primarying Cornyn, and giving them
that same week with
the
same week when the budgets were coming up, and and that happened that same week, and you say, hey, he's one of our guys. What are you doing, man?
And that's when they had Blanche was getting screened. I mean, from all reports, it was something like when they were seen before. That's when they basically took the Senate out to recess for a few weeks, just because they didn't want to face the votes. But there is, and again, you read these things, the percentage that comes true are probably as much as my sixth graders trying to hit 3-pointers. But it's you read about this group of 6 Republican senators who, are basically, I think, going to, and I think again at the end of the day they're going to do the things they want to do, but they're at least going to, I think, turn the screws on Trump's sort of the way he wants to dominate the party. I think it's Collins who's obviously worried about re-election. There's a interesting, I think, stuff to talk about there too. But there's Kennedy. There's Kennedy from Louisiana. There's Cornyn now. I mean McDonnell, and then they've got you got Rand Paul, and then and Murkowski. Those 6, I think, are like, okay, we're going to screw with him if he wants to screw with us. And they're not going to vote against their own, what they believe in. But I think when he starts to take us in the crazy town, I think they're willing to push back now,
Yeah, and Paul's kind of shown that history. Love him or hate him, and obviously we don't agree with much of his policy. But he's willing to push back on those items.
He's authentic. He's authentic,
Yeah.
Yeah, you don't know like what he stands for, at least he stands for it, Yeah.
And again, it gets back to what we've talked about. I think we've talked a little bit about this in the past, the last couple of weeks with the 8, how Paul and McConnell and these guys can win coming out of Kentucky because the policies and the politics of the GOP and specifically Trump is, that's a pretty poor state. It's against their interests, and they just keep recycling these guys out. It's one of those things I don't quite understand.
It's interesting. A lot of the South, it's when you look at what happened in Georgia, everybody's trying. Again, Georgia's, it's still it's purple, but in fact, it's purple is kind of a win. But the fact we took it where Stacey Abrams was able to do a lot of it was based on percentage of black vote was a big part of it. That's why the next logical targets are the South Carolinas, the Mississippis, the Alabamas. But again, that's one of the reasons why the civil rights legislation is so devastating, because if they can't get the seats.
I think they passed one. I think Supreme Court approved Alabama today.
Well, they went around, so the lower courts are kind of, and it was kind of like they did it last week when we had a pretty good day there, and the lower court went against the Jim Crow restructuring type stuff. And the Supreme Court today lined it up with the other stuff they've been doing. So they got rid of that hypocrisy anyway. So that piece of then they got it back to going. I mean, the one thing you could say what you want about Roberts being moderate, whatever, but Roberts at the end of the day is all about restricting voting rights. I mean, that's been his passion since he was a young lawyer, and he might bend on some of the stuff. He's never giving in on that,
Yeah,
and that's where the whole ball game's at. But Blanche is a real dangerous character, I think, in terms of
who's that?
Blanche. I think he's a dangerous character, and he's at the end of the day, the big obstruction now with the Epstein files, and ultimately it's all going to be for looks like Brunson had to go to the locker room, looks like a knee, so that's not good. Not a good start to down by 10. They had but I think I think when we get back the House or the Senate, I think we're going to win the House. I think the Senate, I think we have a very good chance of winning 51-49, which of course makes John Fetterman the most important person in the country, which is scary thought.
Problematic.
And this guy from Maine, I tell you, that if we lose the House, the Senate, I think it's going to be, again, I understand why people in Maine just can't get the Senate. The Democrats in Maine just can't get the Senate, right? God bless them. A lot of good Democrats up there, but this guy, with all the stuff he's got going on, and this is the only way Collins is going to win if something blows up. I mean, we had the former governor there who would have beaten Collins, and they had to get a little too cute. And I think he scares me. He scares me once he gets elected, that he becomes like a Fetterman and is, trying to gain favor by being a little too centrist. You know what I mean? Or a little too accommodating when I were centrist.
I was just thinking too. This is completely random, so I apologize. But talk about they had a cabinet meeting, and I'm intrigued with this is one because we talked about how the clowns in this cabinet and stuff, and most of them are not. The second administration are not career government people and stuff. But I'm intrigued by watching Rubio
Yeah. Oh, yeah.
navigate this thing. His body language, I mean, it's just he's got to feel dirty at night when he goes home and just like, can I take a shower? Because I just watch his body language when different leaders of heads of states come and these type of things, and he just looks uncomfortable the entire time he's there. And I just didn't even know. I don't even know how he. At what point do you want a position?
Yeah, exactly. It's almost like, and again, Secretary of State was always, it's always like sort of the next president position.
Right.
And in the especially early days of the Constitution, always has but man, he is it's just, you're right. His body language, the fact that he's really shut out of everything going on in Iran, really, and that's the reason why he's on this list, isn't because he's I don't think he's not the joke a lot of these other people are. He would have fit well into that first administration, but he's just he's just sold his soul so much that's the hard part with him, is understanding. Trying to do something here. So that's the understanding. What is his take on this whole thing? What is he trying to accomplish? And that's the one that gets you a little nuts, is he's not he doesn't need to do this. He didn't, and that to me with
because once these midterms are done, the Vance and the Rubio, they're going to start eating their young.
Yeah, well, definitely.
Because it's 28. We're ready. Off we go. And you get.
We're all going to make a decision. Do we get away from this popular president, or do we line up with this unpopular president, or do we line up with this unpopular president because of his base? That obviously
it comes back to the practicality of it. How do we get nominated? With the control he has.
Yeah.
That's why I mentioned that. The book I read on Biden and war, and that will talk about being a tough presidency, because you talk about you have an armchair quarterback the entire 4 years.
Oh, yeah. Who was capable of saying anything at any time.
Right. That protocol. The respect that mostly presidents hold for each other, and not to the armchair quarterback. Of course, any normal protocol or process he just threw to the wayside. Yeah. Sure. But so Trump can't run again, but he's going to run.
Yeah,
he's going to run until he passes away. He's going to be a vocal, sideline guy running the party.
It's going to be interesting, as you kind of assume. I still believe there's a good chance his health will preclude him. Not die or anything, but his health really makes it almost like Reagan at the end, where it's time. I think that's where he's probably heading in 2 years, but he also is kind of set with all his hinting and all that he's gonna try another term. I think he's at least gonna do something. Again, it'll be really interesting how it's played out, because I don't know how the other Republicans act if he says, "Yeah, I'm gonna do this, and I'm gonna, come hell or high water with the Supreme Court or anything else."
I'm gonna go to
and again, I don't want to game it out too much mentally, because I think there's a good chance it's just not a thing. But it feels like if he was healthy enough, again, his never say die mentality, I don't know if he can not do it, because it's going to look bad for his brand. He doesn't do it because it's the way he's built. And again, he's not a never say guy in my opinion. I think he just plays the role of it. And again, nobody wants to say no to him, so it makes it hard. I think the other one I think is fascinating. There's the whole Homeland Security. I mean, the puppy killer, and now this guy Mullen, and he was one of the ones who I said at the time, be careful what we ask for.
Well, and you heard his statements the other day. Will you say you're going to follow the court's decisions? And he wouldn't even. These guys are puppets in such a way that, again, it makes our heads spin. The folks that will not admit that Biden won the election. The Congress certified it, but they'll never come out and say that Trump lost. Never come out. And that's what's him the other day. He says, you know, hey, will you follow the court's decision? This is the party of law and order, unless you don't like it.
Unless they don't like the laws. And he didn't even come out and say, you know, normally their position is, we'll see, you know, which is obviously an awful position to begin with. But what I think his quote was the other day was that the laws are being manipulated by liberal justice, which is obviously the opposite of what's happening. And, you know, so he's trying to pre-taint it. And he's not even saying the laws I don't like. He's saying, like, I just don't think the laws have any credibility. And his homeland security, for Christ's sake, you know, he's about protecting the laws, you know, the country.
So
you know?
I'll follow the, you know, it gets back to everything. The election is corrupt if we lose.
Yeah, exactly.
Right?
Exactly.
But if we win, and, you know, we don't hear any pushback. Of course, it was after the first election because he didn't win the popular vote. And then they made the commission, and Pence comes back and says, nothing's there. You know, that didn't last very long.
Well, and the funniest part about it is he loses the election that he's president governing over, but that's a fraudulent election. And the election that Biden is governing over, he wins, and that's a good election. I go, why did Biden's election get run? First of all, they're all good. I don't honestly like when Democrats try to undermine Trump winning the last election, because once you put down the seeds that our elections are corrupt without evidence, there's evidence, different story, but you have to have systematic evidence. I mean, Trump winning that election, the polls showed it was in the possibility, if not probability. I still thought Harris had a little bit of an edge, but I think, again, I do think we have a little bit of a bias in some of our pollsters that's shown out over the last 3 election cycles. But I think when we start to say things like, well, I don't trust that Trump won, well, that's exactly what they think about Biden. So you're kind of laying it up for them, and the elections are good, you know?
So so basically you create this this practice that whatever side loses, they claim that the election is corrupt. So no election is not tainted, and it's just like, the system is certainly slanted. You know, when you talk about the electoral college towards the GOP, I mean, that's just an uphill battle. You got to keep fighting, and you got to know walking into this what the rules are, and you have to deal with it. So the GOP has a distinct advantage with the electoral college as it's currently put together.
Well, it's because I mean, to me, the math on the electoral college works that if you theoretically, if you just take the House of Representatives and there was no gerrymandering,
right,
you can get a proportional election without having a direct vote. The problem is when the electoral college throws in the senators, because it's the Congress senators, that is not proportional to our population.
Right, so that throws it all
creates, and there's more smaller states that are Republican,
so that gives the Dakotas their leverage, all that type of thing, and that's why we'll never see Puerto Rico, we'll never see DC, become states, even though they have a greater population, but they ain't becoming states.
And that's why you'll never really see Canada. As much as they talk about Canada, now Greenland would be one election, wouldn't be much of a dent, but they talk about Canada. But frankly, and I would never want to see anybody capitulate like this. But if Canada really want to do something good for the free world, they'd say, we're coming, because Canada is basically almost the exact same size as California. So it'd be one of two things: either it becomes a huge electoral college pot of gold, which would really swing it, or they divide it up, because then
we get all the senators.
And when you get all the senators,
imagine every province is a state, and you got what, I forget how many provinces are up there, but another 16. I should know.
But they talk about it as being one state. And it would mostly be a Democratic place, but it would be either way, the math would hurt the Republicans. It'll never really happen. And one of the things, it's funny when you talk about Cuba, one of the big catalysts towards the Civil War and stuff that gets kind of buried in the page of history is that the states that formed the Confederacy, they were upset that we weren't annexing would be slaveholding countries because they would be
Right.
sugarcane and all that stuff, like Cuba and the Caribbean. They wanted those to become states. They wanted the U.S. to take them over. So it's almost, again, and this is something I've kind of got a passion out. We just keep repeating history over and over
Well,
again.
that is it. You know, I've been, you know, like I said, I've been reading, you know, the people's history, and if you learn anything, you know, and I think the biggest thing, and this gets back to the Bernie Sanders, I think, position, and then obviously Dr. King towards the end of his life, is that the underbelly of the whole history is the economic imbalance. You know, there's such a significant wealth disparity, and that has just, you know, and you know, you go from once you get to Reagan and you go forward, you know, the disparity has just exploded, and now it's, you know, and that's where
they basically you know, canonized it. They made it part of our culture, and more beyond just trying to grift. It became part of what we do. No, I think the American way is the rich screwing the poor. I mean, you do it enough times, it's like, at some point that's what it is. You know, that's the, you know, what is it? You know, patriotism is one of the most wicked of virtues, and capitalism is you know, is very cruel to a lot of people. As much as, you know, we're people that have benefited from it, you got to call a spade a spade. I mean, it really hurts a lot of people, and in this case, it's only getting worse. You know, as we get to be a larger country.
And when I was reading today, but it's talking about, you know, it used to be the poor, you know, and the, you know, ultra wealthy, but where it's really, and we can see this just with the policies from the last couple of decades, it's creeping into the middle class.
Yeah, definitely.
Yeah, you know, and that's why, you know, my passion is, you know, we've got to find a way to, you know, get universal health care. It just isn't sustainable for our children, particularly our grandchildren, you know. And then when Trump is floating out a budget, which, what's the increase? It's almost like 50% or something for, and then, you know, and that's the history too. That, you know, the military
budget was a couple of years ago. It's double.
Yeah. And so we have money for that. So let's take that double and throw it towards, let's figure out a way to do healthcare. That should be the conversation.
And it's one of those things where, short-term politically, if you come out against defense spending, you're thought of as, you know, stop. And again, it goes back to what we lived through. You're tough for your economy. You're tough. You're not, you know, tough enough. You know, and it's just it's the short-term mentality is such a problem. But this is the healthcare thing, and it is getting. I tell you, I get involved a lot of the companies I'm at and plan design of commercial, and these are people lucky enough to have healthcare that are employers, and it is getting draconian. I mean, we talked about it. I use the emergency room as a baseline. They're just coming up with more creative ways to try to drive you poor by going to one emergency room visit. And sometimes, like we talk to your wife, you have to go to the emergency room. We can't help it, you know. But it's and I guess the standard now is if you get admitted, then it's considered then they do. But there's a lot of very, like, you know, you're not going to get admitted to the hospital for a kidney stone. Yet it's a very good reason why you need to be in the emergency room. You know, it's one of those things. So yeah, it is, and it's funny getting to the wealthy disparity. I did put in here at the end, you know, these secretaries of education who are all about the richest people in the country who would never send their kids to a private school. DeVos in the last administration, now McMahon, you know, no desire for anything in education, just desire to figure out how not to fund public education is what they become.
You know, I mean, it's still in court right now, but it's being used. But they did in Utah did the vouchers. So, you know, give you, I can't remember the exact number, but let's just say 6,000-7,000 per kid. But then what comes the irony behind that? That's not going to get you. It's not going to pay for your tuition in a private school. So all it is a tax break for the wealthy. And then what they did, they're kind of trying to fix it. But then what they did, it was written so loosely that, you know, they're paying for skiing lessons and for piano lessons and dance lessons, and that's what it was paid for. And so make no mistake, so my educational career, covers about 4 decades, and they would have nothing further than to get, drive that, the private school, the public education, just drive it out of business, or get the segregation, make it just so that the absolute chorus of the folks that can end up there. Even the charter schools thing, it's public money, and I always tell folks those are public schools, but I don't know if they're scrutinized as much as the traditional setting, because those are folks that are more on the conservative side. So these, her qualification was just, McMahon I donated a lot of money to the campaign. A lot of money doesn't even do it justice, an inordinate amount of money.
I was actually my previous life, I had business connections going back to them early when I first out of college. I was just a gopher kind of thing, but going back to when they were called Titan Sports in Stanford.
Yeah.
And they were an interesting couple back then. Again, I don't know what my long-term secrecy privacy is, but they've always been a squirrely couple, the two of them, even before they were known. And then DeVos's family, the prince is her brother, and there's a company that, and their family name is tied into it enough. And a couple of years ago, I was doing some interviewing, and they gave me a call, and they started describing. I go, wait a second, you're that Prince family? And they said, yeah. I said, yeah, I can't work. I don't care what it is. And the way the woman from HR talked, I don't think I was the first one to give that response.
Yeah.
So it was kind of funny.
That's the problem. Yeah, so
one thing I want to close out with the clown cabinet, Paul, is I want to give you a chance, because you probably had some incidents like this too. As I was in Amelia Island, we have the place in Northeast Florida, and we went to Amelia Island for a couple of days, and one of our sons, he was with the company where it's an entrepreneurial venture where they have you can get basically you stay in a place, but then you go to like the really nice hotels on a voucher, and you pay for the voucher. Yeah. And so if Mary Alice and I used to do that, we'd go to Palm Springs, we'd want to stay at the Ritz-Carlton. We wouldn't want to pay for staying at Ritz-Carlton. We wanted their amenities, and you had an upgrade. Yeah, you can go pay for the amenities. So anyways, I'm at this nice hotel. I won't say which one is Amelia Island, and we're in the sauna, and obviously for sauna is a pretty intimate place for men to be in. And there's 2 guys in there, and they're talking about Trump, and he had one of his bad days, and they're like almost treating him like he's the he's being ostracized by the community. And I'm trying to be like, hey, I'm in Northeast Florida, I got to take it, I want to be here, I'm in the enemy camp, but they didn't ask me to come. So they start talking about, and they go, well, they're talking about they want to see him run again. And this story goes somewhere, I promise. And so I'm like, oh geez. And then the guy goes, but if he doesn't, it doesn't matter, because his cabinet is so good. I probably should have led with this story, because his cabinet is so good. And I just finally said, guys, is there cameras in this? Is this candid camera? Because I don't care how much you're drinking the Kool-Aid, you cannot think that's a good cabinet. I said, and that was one of the things I should have brought it up earlier, but that was like,
oh yeah,
there's no world in which this is a good cabinet. And like I said, I think we all have a little bit of experience like that. Nothing crystallized the moment we're in, like that moment. Like, how can we fight this level of insanity? And yeah, it's crazy. Yeah.
Well, that's it's been interesting this week too, but. Mm-hmm. It's a theme that you and I are going to probably continue to hit. It'll be interesting to do during the journey to the midterms.
Oh yeah.
But it's part of the things that we have family members, we have friends and community members that are drinking the Kool-Aid.
Yeah.
And it would poison us. And it really is. I think one of the challenges that we're having, or will continue to have, is trying to understand how we are where we are. How do we look at this group of clowns and think that, I watched some of the videos of their cabinet meetings. I'm like, is this like an SB? Is this like student body officer in a high school and stuff? Because it's not professional. I don't even know what the agendas are, except for just, kiss the ring.
Oh, no, definitely.
And it's just and you and I, we kind of scratch our head. I consider ourselves, fairly level-headed, and you get a little intense. You actually make me feel good sometimes. I like the intensity.
I'm not
That's
crazy.
why I like having Karen on the show, because she brings her A game. I love it. I just don't understand it. I don't think we're unreasonable people and stuff, but how have we ended up in this situation where this is our leadership, this is our country, this is our cabinet, and we just keep scratching our heads, and it's hard to figure it out.
Yeah, I love when they bring up Trump derangement syndrome, because I think the Trump derangement syndrome was over there, and B, was there Hitler derangement syndrome? I mean, this is we're pretty passionate. We don't want our country to disappear, and I don't look at that as any derangement whatsoever. The derangement definitely exists, and it's not amongst our group, that's for sure. So, but Paul, this is a good fun subject. I think as these first few, we've been building a foundation of things that sort of these are this is and Bruce has that line in the Long Walk Home. This is about who we are, what we will, and what we won't. And I think this is the type of things that are this is defining where we're at. These type of issues. And again, we obviously made a little fun of these guys, but it's anything but funny. But it's also it's something you couldn't have written this movie 10 years ago. People laughed at you.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, I agree.
Well, Paul, guys. Let's go. Knicks looks like they're coming back a little bit. Looks like Jalen's back on the court, so I think he's overcome this whatever's up with his knee. So hopefully we'll get the sneak one in San Antonio, come back, and Manhattan will be a madhouse. So we'll be talking about that next week, I'm sure.
Yeah. Great. All right, man. Keep in touch. We'll pivot for next week, and we'll see what the next 7 days bring us.
It'll be, I'm sure it will be something we can't imagine.
One thing we know: we will never ever have a lack of material.
No, exactly, Paul. You take it easy. Go Knicks.
Thanks, man.